Hi, I'm Justin Boyd.
Tristan Jones.
Marcy Gonzalez.
And we are the Watchers in the Basement. Welcome to the Watchers in the Basement. Today we are here to discuss the series finale of the HBO series Succession. Yep, that's right. It's the 39th and final episode of one of the best series ever in TV history. So let's get right to it. Let's get our overall thoughts on the finale. Marcy, what did you think about the final episode of Succession?
It was okay. The acting was great. I wish it would have ended a little bit differently. I wish there would have been like an upset, like that would have just like made me like laugh. But after I finished, I was just kind of like, okay, womp womp, like that's it. It's over. So like I said, definitely some really strong performances. Poor little Kendall, right? Like he just can't ever win, but you know, that's what he gets, right? And some like lesser players, kind of like Greg, Carolina, I think had some like good moments, had some pivotal moments there. So I'll be excited to like dive into what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Tristan, what'd you think about the final episode?
I mean, I thought the final episode was perfect for what the show was. Like this isn't an action heavy, show.
Yeah.
I think the finale was more just like a denouement of like all the different scenes and character development that's led up to this point. And it just all came out. Like what happened to Kendall was apt for everything that came, before. Everything that Kendall did, everything that Kendall experienced. Same thing for Roman, same thing for Shiv. Like it was the perfect ending because that's the way it always should have ended to me. So I thought it stuck the landing, and in sticking the landing, which it did, I think Succession cemented itself as like one of the top 5 to 7 like prestige shows of all time, honestly.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's one of the best shows ever. And but for me, I think this is like one of the few times where I'm critical actually of the show. This is maybe the only episode I can think of where I'm actually critical of how it all played out. I just felt like there was a better way to go. I mean, and we can just get right into it. Shiv's double cross at the end. It really, like, to me, it didn't make a ton of sense for her to do that. We find out in the episode she thinks she's going to be the American CEO for Madsen's GoJo Waystar company. Turns out she's not, and we find out it's Tom, and she finds out it's Tom. She gets mad at Tom. Obviously, she's mad at Madsen, so she joins up with her brothers, Kendall and Roman. They have the votes. They can sway the board and keep Waystar-GoJo for themselves. And at the very end, she decides she has the deciding vote. It's 6-6. She can decide it. She decides that no, she can't stomach the thought of having Kendall be the successor to her dad and take over the company, which I'm okay with that part of it. But to me, like the journey she went through in that episode, it just didn't seem like that's what she should have done. It like, I don't know. It's tough for me to because it's like she took herself out of the game, or at least now, like she's not playing the game. She's like on the sidelines. I mean, she's still at the game, right? Like Tom is still her husband. Now he's the new CEO. So obviously she still has a tie to the company, but she's never going to get that top spot. Whereas if she was stuck around with Kendall's erratic. Obviously he contributed to a guy dying, which the way that was brought up in this episode, I thought was such a weird way to bring that up. And like the way Kendall played it, where he was like, she's like, well, you killed a guy. And he's like, well, no, that didn't happen. And it just like, I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I feel like there was a better way to make this all happen. And I feel like it would have been better if Shiv didn't know that Tom was going to be the successor. She makes the vote for Madsen and then finds out that it's not her. It's actually, her husband or soon to be, ex-husband to be is the CEO. I think that would have been a more interesting play. I don't mind the fact that Kendall lost, and obviously Roman's a total mess, and like I really didn't expect any of these people to be the ultimate winner, but it just didn't really play out in the most satisfying way for me, as it could have been. Do you have any thoughts on that, Marcy?
I agree. I would have liked to see Shiv be more upset about it, right? And she gave us like a couple of good scenes where she's like really pissed off about it. She's like, yeah, I'm going to take charge. And I was like, yes, okay, like girl power. I can get behind this. But where did all that anger at Matsson go at the end? Like, I would have loved to see a scene where she's just kind of going off on him. We didn't get that. We just saw her tell Tom to fuck off a couple times and then just be like, okay, like let me rally the troops. Let me get my brothers behind me. So I would have liked to see just more of Shiv kicking ass at the end, being more upset about it, because they don't really take her seriously, Tom and Matsson, right? Like Matsson is literally telling Tom, like, she can't be it, not only because like I may not be able to control her, and like this magazine like made this funny cartoon about it. Mm-hmm. I want to fuck her. Like that is his thing, like of why she can't be it. And then like, and she might want to fuck me back. So like I can't have that. Like we just need somebody else to be CEO. And Tom's just sitting there kind of like, yeah, like totally like, just doing whatever he can to get the top spot for himself. And I'm like, girl, they don't like even respect you. You ended up at the same place as your mom. You're stuck in this marriage. Maybe there's love, but you can't really come back from a lot of things that you said. And it's the cycle repeating itself over again, because you'll have your kid, but I doubt she's going to be like the most loving, present mom. And then like Tom's going to be the CEO of a company, so he's not going to have time for the kid. And it's just kind of the same cycle repeating itself. So there was not a lot of like character growth in any of them, but I was like, Shiv, come on, like what the fuck are you doing? You're just kind of like stuck with Tom now. So I wish it would have ended differently too. That part of it.
Y'all are adorable. Marcy, everything that you said is true, and that's the exact reason why she did those things. Like sometimes people don't grow, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when your base is like this bubble of privilege and wealth, and you've been so defined by your lack of self-awareness for so long, like it's not going to show up in these moments. What we saw in this finale, really what we've seen in every episode of the entire series, is that when faced with big decisions, they turn back into like this childlike innocence. Like they retreat into it, right? We get to the end and we get to the board vote, and Shiv and Roman and Kendall, all walk off to a opposite office. That whole fight was really what you would expect from like, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, like, it's the name calling, it's the unnecessary insults, it's the Shiv just kind of throwing out randomly that Kendall killed a kid as like the basis of her decision making, and like they just turn into kids, and Shiv's as guilty of that as anybody else. Like Shiv is just not going to grow, right? Mm-hmm. Like where she finds herself at the end of this finale, at the end of the series, at the end of the story as a whole, is that's where her mother was. But like I say this all the time, we ultimately become our parents. And what we saw from the boys was like their insatiated, like this insatiable thirst to not just be like their father, but to be their father, mm-hmm. right? To be like their father's clone. Shiv did everything in her power to run away from being her mother. And ultimately, what we see in all these great dramas, right, that really deal with the concept of the faultiness of wanting things, right, of desire. It's like the more you want something, or the more you try to run away from something, the closer you get to it. Or in another case, the more you run towards something, the further you get from it. So Shiv ultimately will become her mother, because that's how she was trained, right? Like what other training does she have on being a mother, being a wife to a powerful man? Like this was always going to happen, because this is just what her life circumstances had led her to. So I didn't think that she was going to go off on Madsen, because when have we seen Shiv really go off on somebody more powerful than she is?
Yeah.
That's just not something, honestly, that Kendall will try to do that, because Kendall's steadily always trying to punch above his weight. Roman backs down with the first sight of any type of bite, right? Shiv will, like her father, like her father, like her mother, she will punch down with veracity at somebody she knows she has more power than, or more leverage than. The second that you demonstrate that you have more of that than Shiv, she backs down, and she becomes a little bit more muted. So that's just Shiv. Shiv, her whole character has always been somebody who sees herself as one thing, but ultimately she's another thing. She sees herself as this liberal feminist, girl power, girl boss, and she just really never had the chops, the confidence, or really the intelligence to be in these things. So I think she finds herself at the perfect position for her, which is kind of playing a little bit the puppet strings for somebody more powerful. Like, in a way, she was trying to do that with her father, but she really could never get all the way through, get her claws deep into him, because he's impenetrable to a degree. But Tom is absolutely the perfect person for this. So it's her proximity to power that she's always wanted, even when she wasn't really like qualified to have that power. So it's the next best of both worlds for sure.
She's so dumb though, because she could have gone through with the plan, let Kendall be CEO for a minute and then come out and be like, oh yeah, Kendall, remember when you killed that kid? How about you step down now and let me be CEO? I don't know. I think she could have played that differently, but you're right. It's the whole proximity to power. She thinks by making this move, she's setting herself up, but I don't think so. I think if Tom is going to be somebody's puppet, it might be Madsen more than Shiv at this point. I think a lot has gone down between Tom and Shiv that he might be more closely aligned with Madsen, and just kind of, like Shiv said, he'll suck any dick in the room. He's probably going to want to be a sycophant for Madsen and not necessarily care about Shiv, or be willing to just kind of go along with what she says anymore. Hopefully maybe he'll start growing a backbone now that he's CEO, but I doubt it.
I doubt it. I think Shiv also, she's made attempts to grab for that power in that particular world. If we remember, kind of go over what you said earlier, Justin, at the beginning of this series, she's outside the power structure.
Yeah. So
she just really kind of ended up where she began, which was outside of the Waystar group officially. And I think I firmly believe that Shiv, in that moment when it was time to vote, I think she's weighing two horrible options: Kendall as CEO, Madsen as CEO. None of those are good options. None of those really lead to much good for her. I think Kendall at no point would ever allow Shiv the necessary runway that she would need to grab a lot of power. And Madsen, she was just completely shut out and played, and she realized that. Part of me thinks Shiv is she thinks Kendall will be horrible, but I think she just wants to get out. That's all. All of this has been leading to the correct decision is that none of them should ever be in this. All this has done is tear them apart as individuals, tear them apart as siblings. And Shiv just made the first official decision to just kind of step away from all of it.
Yeah.
I just thought that she would have a hard time with the power dynamic between Tom and Shiv has changed completely since the series began, right? She had the power, he's doing whatever she wants, whatever her dad wants. He's trying to get in there. Now he's in. Now it's reversed. He's the CEO going forward, and she's the one who wants to have a relationship with him. I mean, that they're married, which sounds funny, but she's trying to get back with him. And he's telling her no, I'm not sure. Maybe, he has all the power. And I feel like that, while she's attracted or drawn to power, the dynamic, because he's always been kind of her pushover, and that's not the case anymore. So I just thought that, I don't think that I don't know. I just don't see that character wanting to continue on with Tom, with him having even more power. And given how he got his power, from her dad, you know, wormed his way in and basically took what she thought was hers, and now, he's in the top spot going forward. I just thought that, like, for her to do that when her brother, like, yeah, she doesn't like her brother, she can't stomach her brother, but like Marcy's saying, her brother has got a lot of problems. He's very erratic, and he might be the CEO for a year or less, and then who knows what happens to Kendall. He could lose it by his own undoing, or yeah, she's always got that card to play, the you killed a kid card that could be, in the press, could be played in the press, and it could be his downfall real quick. So to me, it's just like she took herself out of the game, and I mean, she's still a part of it. She's still right next to Tom, but I don't know. I just don't see that.
Think about what the game is. Think about what she would have to do in order to win said game. It would have to be more backstabbing, more fighting, more family drama, more, all that, when she's bringing a kid into the world. Hopefully this is a chance to like reset the family cycle of like abuse, so just absolutely cutting each other down like that. But that's the game. That's the only way for her to win, is to kill her siblings, to kill her family. And hopefully it's some self-awareness to say, hey, maybe for once my mother is right, and that this whole thing is killing all of us. It's already cost them their father. It's cost them childhood. It's cost them like a true loving sibling, relationship. It could cost her even further her marriage, relationship with her child. Like, at some point, is it worth it? You're getting billions from a deal. Go walk away and do something else, or do nothing.
Yeah, you're definitely set up for life at this point. And I'll ask this question to the group when they kind of arrived at the office. Carolina is like, hey, like, yeah, it would be nice to change the culture. And I'm wondering if maybe like that comment from Carolina didn't also kind of like put that doubt into Shiv's mind about like, is it the right move moving forward if we just keep with the same old, like Kendall's still part of it, Roman's still part of it, or like should we just kind of like shake it all up, change everything up? I think maybe that kind of like also stuck in her mind a little bit when it was time to make a choice. And then I was wondering, did Carolina go up and say that just because, or did somebody send her to again like put a little seed of doubt into Shiv's mind before it was time to make that vote?
Theory.
Yeah.
I thought it was just funny that Carolina was like, hey, we need to change this backstabbing culture.
Yeah.
The media was like, hey,
let's get rid of Hugo.
But if anything, that might have further opened Shiv's eyes up to like just the toxicity of that place, and like, what's the point? Like, what has fighting for that top spot served anybody? Honestly, I don't. So,
Yeah, so let's go to the chat. So Ruby's joining us once again. We appreciate you joining us for the third or fourth week in a row, or maybe more than that. The comment here is, once Tom has the power, he decides to offer his hand to Shiv. And I wanted to show y'all, this is the final image we see of Tom and Shiv. Let me throw this up here. I mean, talk about how sad this is. Like, this is a, not a loving marriage going forward. This is, I mean, Shiv, she didn't really win, but she didn't really lose. And this is definitely like what a eye looks like, I guess. I don't know. What are y'all's thoughts on this final image of these two characters?
It's hilarious and sad at the same time, because I've definitely, at end of a relationship, you're like just kind of like holding hands because it's like whatever. Like, I guess this is what we're doing. So yeah, it's like, it's sad, right? Like, I laugh about it, but I don't think that's a relationship that can last, or maybe should last, especially if they're bringing like new life into the world. I think it's very toxic. I think they've said way too many things that you can't take back. I don't think it's going to work, but I hope it'll work out for the best for both of them, right? But yeah, like, no, that was just heartbreaking to just see her knowing she made this decision that maybe like she like wasn't the best, right? Like, she chose the lesser of two evils. but she's just kind of resigned herself to, okay, like this is going to be my life now. I'm going to be the number two to Tom, who is now the CEO of the company my dad built because some other man like stabbed me in the back. Like, no, like I kind of feel for her, but then, I kind of don't.
This whole show is about, love versus money. And when you choose the latter, this is what you get. Like, these are two people who are actively choosing money, prestige, like, and everything that comes with it over like actual love. One, loving themselves enough to like choose partners who don't try to cut you down at every turn. And then like actually loving other people to the point where you're willing to put your own selfish desires aside, in service of them. And these are two people who, like we said, they shouldn't be together at all. But in that world, how many unloving marriages are like kind of normalized, right? And that super wealthy 1% type world it's a transactional, concept. So they've made a choice to like continue on with this transaction. Ruby made a great point in the chat about another thing that could have caused Shiv to lose confidence in Kendall was his completely unpreparedness in his presentation about the Gojo deal. I didn't notice it as much at first on the first watch. I was like, man, wow, Kendall really kind of rushed through that. Yeah. And the second one was like, oh, actually, he's not prepared because if you remember, he was talking, I want to say Hugo, before he got on the plane to go to his mother's vacation home. And he was just like, hey, I'll kind of fast track this on the plane or kind of skim through it. So like he wasn't really prepared for that pitch. And I think that plus everything else that Shiv knows about Kendall and every other time he's failed spectacularly and the narcissism and the cowardice and all these, I think all those things came to a head in that moment. And she's like, she couldn't go through with it.
Yeah, I mean, Kendall, he didn't acquit himself very well in this episode, and we'll get into that. But I just want to say, I did think that when early in the episode, whenever Shiv is kind of pitching to Tom about, having a real relationship, I did like how she was like, like once you've said and done the worst things to each other, you're kind of free. There's like, it's kind of an interesting spin on that, like once you tell them like how much of a piece of shit they are, then it's like, well, we've said it all. So now we can just like, it's convenient. It's easier for our schedules if we're just together. So I don't know. I liked her trying to spin that. And I like how people on this show can't like talk like people. They can't share their feelings in a direct way. It's got to be a roundabout way with everything. And so that's a great moment for her on the phone.
Feelings are weakness, and they can't be weak at any point, especially when you're in a mode where you're always competing with other people for something. You can't ever show weakness. Like, and literally you got a husband and wife who are fighting against each other, competing against each other, knowingly or unknowingly. So like the thought of showing weakness at any point, especially also for Shiv, the whole basis of their relationship is her having this power. Like that's what makes it appealing to her. Yeah. So like it has to be super weird for her to basically propose a relationship to your current husband, who you said many a time that you don't love.
And he completely swerved her, and I was like, oh, that hurts. Like even watching that, like I hurt for you, Shiv. Like that was a complete nope. I don't know Shiv, which is like no.
So, as we've talked about, it was Womscan for the win. He gets selected by Mattson. I'll start with you, Marcy. How surprised were you that it was Tom? Because last week on this podcast, we talked about how there was kind of some breadcrumbs, and it was kind of looking like Greg the Egg was rising up. And if you look at the way Greg kind of played the game, all 4 seasons, he kind of did pretty well for himself up until the end. What did you think about Tom being Mattson's choice for the American CEO?
I wasn't completely surprised. week when we talked about it, I was like, oh, it could have like I think he's gonna double cross Shiv, and if he does, it's either gonna be like a few people that I had in mind. So I wasn't completely shocked that it was Tom. I was hoping it was Greg, because that would have been an upset, and a lot of people would have just been like so like fucking like pissed, and I would have like thought that would be like hilarious, just to kind of have like this dumb idiot be the CEO. But yeah, not crazy about it, again, just because I don't love that Tom is such a sycophant, right? Like, that is so annoying to me. I hate people that are like that. But it makes sense, obviously, because Matsson, even though he said that cartoon didn't bother him, right? Like, that Shiv is controlling the puppet strings. Like,
Yeah.
I think he still has way too much of an ego to really not be upset about it or feel some type of way about it. So, of course, he's not going to get somebody that I guess he could feel would be like as strong as he is, or like as confident. So obviously he's going to pick somebody like Tom. But I mean, I'm not in love with the idea, but you know, way to go, Tom. Like, from where is he from? Nebraska or Iowa, or like one of those states, you know, like now you're a CEO. So good for you. Like, you're sucking up, eventually paid off like 40 years later.
Yeah, I thought it was genius the way they placed the magazine, or like the shot of the magazine of Shiv controlling him, and they just kind of like those breadcrumbs just kept spilling elsewhere throughout the episode. You know, he's talking about, when he's talking to Tom about Shiv, about how, you know, he just thinks she's doing too much, you know, in a sense, like she's a little bit too aggressive. A lot of these, you know, code words that are used against like powerful women or assertive women. Like he makes a complaint, you know, a few times throughout that episode. But Tom's psychophantism, whatever, that's actually what endeared Matsson to him, or endeared Tom to Matsson in the first place. Like I said, I need somebody I can control, right? Especially like Marcy said, like having that ego, and the fact that he knows that other people can see how Shiv is kind of pulling, you know, the puppet strings on him. Like, that is only going to make him want somebody, like I said, I don't want a partner, you know? So, and then having Tom basically kind of eat the fact that Matsson said he wants to fuck his wife, like, kind of sealed it. Like, this is somebody that I can send out to go do the hard things that I don't want to do while I'm doing the things that I love, like he says. And also somebody who's I'm not going to get a lot of pushback on from. I wasn't surprised. At the beginning of the season, I thought it was going to be Tom. I think because like Greg would have just been way too on the nose for Jesse Armstrong, who clearly has like clear critiques on American capitalism and just our culture of worshiping rich people. That would have been way too on the nose. Like, even in our society now, which, like I said, kind of rewards rich people for just being born on third base. Like, I don't know if we have a lot of examples of somebody that inept and that inexperienced, like taking over more experienced inept people, which is Tom. Basically, Tom is a middle inept, privileged person, like, for that job, which made him perfect for it, honestly.
Yeah, you're right. Matsson said he wasn't looking for a partner. He wanted a front man. He wanted a pain sponge, which that was a new term for me. I wasn't familiar with pain sponge. You know, Matsson, he thought she thought Shiv was kind of too pushy. You know, she had her own. He said, you know, she's got a lot of ideas, but I've got my own ideas. And he said, you know, I thought I needed her to kind of navigate the political landscape, but turns out that's super easy. Didn't need her for that. And yeah, I mean, you could tell even in the first time we see Matsson and Shiv, when she's like, okay, so we're running through the numbers, and so, you know, we're gonna announce me as CEO, and he never really signs off on it. He just kind of says, oh yeah, let's keep going. Like, it's, and y'all are right. The cartoon as him, you know, being like, you know, she's the puppet master behind him or whatever, that definitely bothered him, because, you know, he was looking at it. He brought it up a couple of times. So he definitely saw how thin skinned he was. And but to me, it was surprising that it was Tom. But then after seeing how it all played out, it makes total sense because Tom was just cool with anything. Even talk of Mattson having sex with his wife, he was like, "Yeah, I understand. We're men. Like, I got it, man. Whatever you say. Like, I'm here." Like, and he Mattson could see that Tom was loyal, at least loyal. He'd be loyal to him. That's all he cared about. I just thought that the way Greg had kind of maneuvered himself this season, I thought that Greg had out Tom, and it seemed like he was kind of like, secretly behind Tom's back was inching up, above Tom. Cause like a couple episodes ago, he wanted Greg to do something. He's like, I need you to be Gregging for me. And it's like, I don't do coffee anymore. Like all these little things. Greg had kind of elevated himself at least in his own mind. But I thought it would have been awesome if it could have been Greg, because I think it would have been really funny to see, the guy who in the first episode he was puking out of the eye hole of the mascot. Now, at the very end, he's the CEO of the company, and he's also Madsen's puppet. So
now he's just making $200,000 as a glorified intern. he came up. He's okay.
Well,
yeah,
and
Tom's got him.
Yeah, Tom's got him. But I like how Tom kind of like put his stamp on him. Literally, he put a sticker on Greg's forehead, the sticker from Connor and Willa's reallocation antique show, or whatever you want to call it, from Logan's apartment. I thought that was a nice touch to save that sticker, to put it right in his forehead.
It's a power move, right?
Yeah.
I own you, bitch.
And that's the last we saw of Greg, right? That's the last image of Greg.
Yeah.
For the show, which
no, it is. Yeah, you're
yeah.
right. I'm thinking when Mattson calls him Judas, but that was right before.
Right. Yeah, the very awkward contract signing. The guy who actually signed the contract was Roman, and Roman. Tristan, you were on last week's episode, but I did want to shout out I did it last week on the episode. You totally called what would happen to Roman, because he melted down, fell apart at the funeral. And this episode was just a continuation of that. He was Roman. And that's the best way to put it. He was just nothing. And Tristan, I'll let you talk about it. What did you think about Roman in the final episode?
We see different sides of Roman.
Yeah.
We see like the lost, distressed child at the beginning, as he literally hides out at his mother's house. So interesting, like to run away from the grief that he feels about his father, he runs away to his mother. Two people that he has like fraught relationships with and emotional distress out the ass. Yeah. But like he can't really get away from either one of them. He can't exist independent of either one of them. Siblings come, so like this is literally everybody who cares about Roman in the world. Yeah. There at that house, and you feel so sorry for him, because I genuinely feel sorry for people who are fuck ups. Like I legitimately feel sorry for them, because I don't feel like to a degree that they can help it, right? Like I feel like I make good decisions in life. Like every once in a while you make a bad one, you learn from it, you self-aggrandize, self-evaluate. You're like, okay, I can't make that one anymore. Let me do better going forward. Some people just make shitty decision after shitty decision, and sometimes those shitty decisions are diversified. Sometimes they make bad financial decisions, which leads to bad social decisions, which lead bad family decisions. Roman just makes continuously diversified shitty decisions. Is he a shitty person? To a degree, yeah. But he also just, at his core, he's impulsive and he makes bad plays. So I felt sorry for him when they're discussing like the strategy, to the board, and coming in as a unified voting block with one person as CEO, and like there's still like that last 5% of Roman who thinks that he has a chance. And everybody else knows, everyone in the world who witnessed him at the funeral, who just witnessed him in general, understands that it can never, ever, ever be Roman. Like he can't. He still hasn't fully seen outside of his bubble to understand that he's a laughingstock, and that he and by extension his other two siblings don't have the credibility to like ever be taken seriously in that world. And by the end of this episode, it's just there's a further confirmation, and to the point where he can't even deny it himself. Like the central line that I think is going to be taken from this episode, this finale, is that hey, we are bullshit.
Yeah, that's the best quote of the series. We're bullshit. We're nothing. Yeah,
but it took us 39 episodes to get to the thing that the audience already knew.
Right.
But it took them literally the 2 years or so that the show was depicting to understand that they are bullshit. Now, what comes next? I wish we could get at least like the little words at the end, like, hey. Right. 2 years from now, Roman went on to start his own venture capitalist fund, like whatever the fuck, like something like where does this lead to? Like, what did that last ditch of self-awareness lead to? What's interesting is that at the end, Kendall is somewhere by the beach, Lower Manhattan, like just kind of staring into the abyss, looking and feeling like a dead man, like somebody who's lost his complete soul.
Yeah.
Shiv also looks like she's lost a bit of her soul, and she's kind of square pegged herself into like this horrible marriage. Roman, at least more so than his siblings, looks like he's about to crack somewhat of a smile. Like,
he looks pretty happy when he's at the bar. I got the image here. Yeah, he's
like, this could be a new beginning. Could be, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think Roman, more so than Shiv and Kendall, has been inching towards like more self-awareness. I don't know if that self-awareness leads to like self-improvement. That's not always. Some people are aware of who they are and it's become more of who they already are. Some people go the opposite route and say, okay, let me improve this, that, and the third. So I don't know, like, but I do see like this kind of the last gasp of maybe an old Roman, potentially old Roman turning into a better Roman. I won't say a new Roman, but just a better one. So we'll never really see that on screen, but we can definitely project out what he did after episode 10 of this season.
Yeah, a Roman unburdened by this family succession thing that's played out for years. Marcy, what do you think about Roman? What do you think about Roman's future? What's next for the youngest boy?
I don't know, but it was just great in this episode to see how much, I guess, sway, influence that Jerry still has on him. We could see that first when they're watching that video at Connor's house of that virtual dinner with Logan, and Carl, Frank, and Jerry were there, right? He catches a glimpse of Jerry on the screen, and then like he gives us a really weird expression like, ooh, that kind of hit me somewhere. That was a little bit painful. And then again, when Jerry is at the HQ and they're about to do the board meeting and sign everything, he's like, why is she here? Like, why is she here? You could see that he's very, I guess, disturbed, distraught. I don't know what he is when he sees Jerry, but she obviously brings up some kind of reaction in him. So that was just like very interesting to see, like, hey, like Jerry still has a lot of like influence over you for whatever reason. So I don't know what's next for Roman. Like Tristan said, hopefully he is gaining more self-awareness and hopefully like will actually do something worthwhile. Like now that he's realized that everything was bullshit, like go and try to be and do whatever you want and make your life not bullshit. Just move on. You are a billionaire. You will be okay. It's not that crucial. I mean, I guess if you're a billionaire and you've lost your company, it might be, but in the grand scheme of things, you're still a billionaire. Just go enjoy your money. Find somebody, find happiness, go travel the world, invest in Peter's friends, whatever company they're trying to have you invest in. Yeah, it was just very interesting to see the reactions that Jerry can bring out in him. And I don't know if she was cognizant of that, but I'm wondering if maybe she wasn't also just asked to be at the Waystar HQ because they knew Roman was going to be there and might have some kind of reaction to her.
Yeah, that's me. I mean, it sounds like Jerry's got a future going forward because Tom mentions her at the end. Where's Jerry? Like he's looking for her to help him or whatever. But as Ruby pointed out, when we leave Roman, he's at that bar and he's drinking a martini, which is Jerry's drink of choice. So I'm sure there was some kind of meaning behind that. The one thing, I mean, there's several things in this episode, but the one thing with Roman, the one scene that I kind of didn't totally understand was the scene, but before the vote, when Kendall still thinks he has Roman and Shiv on his side, and it's just Roman and Kendall in the office, and Roman, he's talking about he's got stitched up from his run-in with the protesters in the last episode, and he's talking about his stitches, and he's saying, and he's kind of like crying, or so he's saying, "Why isn't it me?" And then Kendall hugs him, but it's a very aggressive hug where he has Roman's head against his shoulder, so much so that it opens up the wound on his head. And I honestly, in my notes, I put, what is happening here? So Tristan, could you help me understand is Kendall trying to hurt him? Is it kind of like a big brother, little brother, like you're going to do what I need you to do, and then you can go on? I just didn't really understand that part of it.
I took it as a power play.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things you do to your little brother to show how dominant you
Yeah.
are. I say this as a big brother who used to do that to my brother. I don't know if Roman thinks. I think Roman thinks that it's part, loving gesture, part, show of force. At the end, Kendall's like, "Hey, I love you, man." Roman's like, "I fucking hate you." Like,
yeah, exactly.
But no, like I didn't even notice it on the first watch. It wasn't until the second where like he's literally driving his forehead into his shoulder, rubbing it and letting Roman's trying to get loose, and he's like, he won't let him out. So again, this is that killer instinct that Logan was always looking for in Kendall. Like he started to show it, towards the back half of the season.
Right.
He just didn't have like all the other necessary tools. Like that's typical of Kendall, like to acquire one skill that you need to be successful, but forget about the other things that need to go around that skill, like tact, reading the room, poise, preparedness. Like he grasps these one skills and like just forgets about the other preliminary things that he needs. But like he had started to show a lot of that killer instinct that his father said he didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, like the people he was best equipped to demonstrate that killer instinct were his own siblings. And ultimately that ended up being his downfall.
Yeah, I mean, to me, just the timing of it was strange because, after he's, aggressively hugging Roman, as Roman leaves, he's saying, Roman's saying it could have been me. And Kendall even says, yeah, it could have been you. And it's like, to me, the way he said it was almost like a mocking, like, what are you doing, man? Like he's on your side right now. You need his vote. What's going on? Like it's just not the right time to be trying to assert your dominance. Like you've got him in this agreement. And Roman was still voted against the deal. Now, had the vote come after the final scene with the siblings, I don't know if I guess he probably would have voted in Mattson's favor, but
another thing to remember, at that point, Kendall's also operating under the assumption that he's going to be CEO.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So he thinks it's already in the bag. Shiv, him and Roman, like they're the deciding votes there. So like he feels like it's comfortable to start asserting your dominance as the top guy before you have it. So like that's putting that card in front of the horse. That's Roman. I'm not Roman. That's Kendall to a T.
Yeah, that's part of the the lack of being prepared for the meeting. Also, that kind of goes hand in hand. He thought he had the votes, and so he was ready to take over. And also, he's the eldest son. Like he brought that up, and I like how when he said that, Shiv was like, well, but you're not though. And he's not, like Connor is, but in amongst those three, he is the eldest boy. What did Marcy, what did you think about the final scene with the siblings where, I mean, it just becomes like, it's really a awful scene between these characters where it's like, to me, it's like going forward in the future, do these people ever interact with each other, or are they just so used to this way of being around one another that's just like another day and they just move on? I'll see you next week or whatever at the next mom's brunch in Barbados or whatever. What do you think? Do you think these people are going to see each other again, or are they done?
It was definitely like sibling rivalry on steroids for sure. It was intense. But I think that's why Connor is so interested in all of it, because he doesn't want to partake in like their stupid crap. All they've done their whole life is just fight over this one thing that none of them ended up getting. However, I do think that they'll see each other again. I don't think like this is the last. I don't think that they'll be estranged from each other forever. Maybe not initially, right? But I think it might be easier for Roman to come back and maybe have some type of relationship with them. Because it seems like, although they all wanted it very badly, I think Kendall was the one that was like, I need this thing to survive, right? Like Shiv and Roman said that they really wanted it, but none of them said like, I need this. If I don't get this, I might die, like Kendall did. Right. So I think, maybe they do have some type of relationship moving forward, especially like you said, Justin, like this is how they've always been with each other. So it's not like this was like the fight that broke the camel's back and like, we're not ever going to be, have some type of relationship with each other again. It will be interesting to see what happens after, like Shiv has her baby. If you imagine that, like maybe that's something that brings the siblings together. I don't know. I think it might take Kendall a little bit longer, especially after what Roman said about his kids. That was uniquely cruel. Like that wasn't cool at all. But it's just painful again that he said he was saying those things, but he's like, that's what dad said about them anyway. So I think it might take Kendall a little bit longer, because that's understandably like something very, very terrible to tell somebody and to feel that way about their kids. So it would not be like shocking if Kendall just kind of didn't want to have a relationship with Roman moving forward for a while, knowing that he feels this way about his own kids.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the bloodline comment because, as you said, Roman said, he pointed to Shiv and he's like, well, she's the bloodline. And Kendall's like, we're all the bloodline. And he said, but her kids. And he's like, well, my kids. And then he said, well, your kids, they're two randos. He's, they aren't real. They're a pair of randos. One of them was a buy-in. The other one was a half Rava, half some other guy. And I wonder, I mean, obviously it's a terrible comment, but do you think that comment, like when Roman says that, he points out that Shiv's, she's pregnant, she's gonna have a kid, although it doesn't seem like she's going to be the greatest mom ever. Do you think that played in her decision to side with Matsson and Tom and go, well, you know what, we have children, their future? Like, do you think she cares about her kid's future as far as like potentially running this company down the line, or do you think it was just, I mean,
I think that played a big part.
You play so? Really? Okay.
I absolutely think so.
Yep.
If we go back to the election episode, she's talking about, hey, like Macon, like there are consequences to letting, or to basically crowning Macon as president, like having him run the country. There are consequences. Like I think she showed real concern. Shiv is just always, and Kendall is also to a degree, like they're always stuck between like morality and like self-interest. Like she was willing to work with Mencken, like she said, like my father was flexible, I'm flexible, right? So like she can be very flimsy on a lot of her morals and ethics, but I think at her core, she at least understands when something is like clearly wrong, right? Mencken is clearly wrong. Kendall as CEO, clearly wrong. Like who knows better how incompetent Kendall is than like his own siblings. And we were talking earlier about like how rolling with Kendall as CEO could eventually lead to some backdoor, mechanism for her to be CEO.
Yeah.
But how much damage could Kendall do in the interim before that happened? Like Kendall could do a lot of damage, right? Like say what you want about Matsson. I don't think that he would do as much external damage to the company as much as he would probably like internal, like individual people like Eva and stuff like that. Like you always have to worry about stuff like that. I don't think he would tank an entire company. I think Kendall would tank an entire company, right? And so I think she's thinking about her own values. I think she's thinking about her kid. And what Kendall could do in, by extension, Roman as well to that company in the interim. I think all those things play a decision, right? There's just no upside to her choosing Kendall.
Yeah. No, I agree. But at the same time, I don't know if she realizes yet that like, it's not your company anymore. Like, yeah, Tom is CEO, but Matsson bought the company. So like, if then Matsson decides to change his mind, that's his prerogative, and you're not going to have as much of a say in Tom, even if he is CEO. He's not going to have as much of a say as like Matsson will. So, like I think maybe they're forgetting that part that like, yes, the company, Tom is CEO, but it's not your company anymore. It's Matsson's. But yeah, I definitely think Kendall, like you said, Tristan would definitely take that tank the company before Matsson would, because Matsson can like send pints of blood to an employee and she's still working for him. So obviously, like he hasn't fucked up that badly with Eva to make her, want to quit and sue him or whatever. So that I also felt was just very, very interesting.
Yeah, maybe the infrastructure in Gojo is better than a Waystar. Maybe they're just more competent. I mean, as we talked about before, they're very impressive. Former Olympians are part of their team, so maybe that's a big part of it too. I do think though that like while Kendall, yeah, I agree. Long term, I don't think Kendall is going to be the greatest for this company. Of the three siblings, I do think he was the best. He's the best choice to be the front man for that group. Of all of those three people, he's the one that to step up and could do something. He can fake it till he makes it. He will never make it, but he could fake it well enough to do something. Now long term, yeah, I think he's a disaster. And I mean long term, like just him as a person is a disaster. And you see like in this show, you see how much like that job and being the CEO, running his dad's company, how much that means to him, to where he literally tells him like, look, if I don't get this, I might die. And I just transitioning to like the last time we see him on camera, the last shot of the series, he's, walking through this park in New York and he's like staring at the Hudson River. And I honestly thought he was going to jump in the water because like water has been such a big thing with that character throughout the seasons, whether it's, trying to drown himself in a pool or he got into the ocean earlier in this episode when they were in Barbados. And like, he's always been around the water. There was an episode, I guess, early in the season when they were in California, when after he did his big presentation, he went and took a dip in the ocean and he's laying there. And that's how the episode ended. I really thought he was going to jump, and listening to the companion podcast, he actually filmed a scene where he climbed over the barrier and was like about to jump in the Hudson River, but his bodyguard Colin like runs over there and like tells him to stop. And they filmed it, but they decided not to use it. I do think that this image that we're seeing right now is more powerful because you could see a person who's just literally like lost. Like, what is the rest of Kendall's life now that he doesn't have this job? Like what's next for this person, this character?
But this is why I feel like those siblings will always have a relationship. It's because they don't have anyone else. Like they don't have their parents.
Yeah.
There are no friends that, any of us can really like credibly speak to.
I mean, Stewie, he's solid, right? Okay.
Good Lord. If that's a friend. Good Lord. But they always, and that's what kind of what toxicity does. Like it's also hard to like get away from. And so like until they really do the self-awareness work, which would lead to the conclusion that they probably need a break from each other and like really need to explore life away from each other, Waystar, like that whole bubble. I think they would always come back to each other for better or for worse.
Yeah, pretty much. I agree. I mean, it's sad. It just is a sad ending for him. But again, you are a billionaire. You have piles of money. Go do something else. Go do whatever else you want to do. You have your 2 kids. I mean, whatever like fuck ups Kendall has done and however like terrible he's been as a person, I think like he still shows us that he loves his kids, right? He's capable of that, of love. So like just go have a relationship with him. Be better than your own dad was. And I feel so bad that he wasn't at the end of this series at a point where he could see beyond that. It's like, dude, it's like really fucking sad. Like, why is this one thing like the only thing you were working toward and the only thing like you felt you could be good at? Like, go be good at something else, or at least try to be good at something else. I mean, you haven't really proven that you can be good at this one thing anyway. So, like, just go suck at something else.
Yeah, I do think that this image though is a pretty apropos way to end the series, and it was the director Mark Mylod after the episode. He said that it was a perfectly painful ending, and especially for Kendall. I think that's you couldn't put it any better than that. Just the look on his face, the music. I mean, it was just like, for characters that like these are unlikable characters, you do kind of feel for this guy because this is his whole life. His whole ambition in life was to be his father or to take over his company. Now that's gone, and I mean, it's an incredible way to end the series. I don't know. They definitely nailed. They stuck the landing with Kendall for sure, in my opinion. Now, early in the episode, I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on another big scene. The siblings at the end of the episode are obviously, they're separate. They're going their separate ways. But we got to see a team up that I wasn't expecting in this episode. After Kendall learns from Greg that Matsson is not going to, in fact, hand over the CEO job to Shiv. He lets Shiv know that, hey, Matsson's looking at other candidates. And they even throw out the guy from Walter, Lawrence Yee, which I thought we were going to see him. I was like, are we going to see the guy we haven't seen since like the first season? But he did not return. But I thought it was interesting. Then right away, the kids have to come together. The siblings have to come together, and they do this team up to where they have to anoint someone, and they end up anointing Kendall as their king to, as they're going to try to sway the board. Now they have the votes. The decision to pick Kendall, I think, among the three, as I've said, I think was the right decision. But the way they came to that decision and the way they celebrated that decision in a way, if you will, is this scene called Meal Fit for a King, where they create the most disgusting smoothie ever, and they make Kendall drink it, and then Roman crowns him by pouring the smoothie over his head. Marcy, what are your thoughts on that smoothie? Is there any way you drink that?
Hell no. Jeremy Strong drank it because
he actually did, yeah.
That committed to just acting in the role. Like, kudos to him. That was disgusting. If I even tried to sip of that, I would probably puke. That looked disgusting. However, I really liked that scene because it's like, this is what people have been trying to get you to understand. If you work together, like maybe you could actually succeed at something, right? Like it might not just be you at the top, but at least you succeed and you're doing it with your siblings. So I thought, like, I really liked that scene. It was just really fun to see them interact that way, because it's not something that we get to see a lot, that we got to see a lot throughout the series. But no, that was a disgusting smoothie. Kudos to Jeremy Strong for like being that method to like taste it. um I just really like the scene, and it's like, duh, like this is what everybody's been trying to tell you, like just work together. Stupid.
That scene confirmed for me. It cemented the fact that neither one of them was gonna nothing good was gonna happen. Because like we get that a lot. Like we get like these really happy, joyous moments between the siblings before something gets snatched out from one or all three of them, right? The end of season 3, like it finally gets to them like, hey, we should work together. We should, take each other's strengths and so on and work and like take down the old man. And like they got that, and they got assassinated basically by Tom in Italy. So like every time that one of them or all three of them feels like they're on top of the world, or like they get a little bit of hubris, like it always comes crashing down. But it was an interesting scene to me because like the best parts of, Shiv, Kendall, and Roy are when they are like kind of go back into like this childlike, state, right? And it's interesting to juxtapose that scene with the last scene, during the board vote, right? Like because they're acting like kids on both times, right? It's childish games. Hey, eat this really nasty thing, or pour it over your head. Licking the cheese, stepdad's cheese and stuff like that. Being really rebellious, and your mother comes in and tells them, "Hey, be quiet. Be a little bit more quieter and stuff like that." These are normal parent-child conversations, except they're 37 plus. You would say 38 plus. Yeah. And you juxtapose that to the end where they're literally sniping at each other and backstabbing and insulting and all these things like this. These are the same. It's the same coin with them, right? But just two different sides. So when that scene was happening and I saw them laughing and joking and all that, and the music, the score was all optimistic. Like the natural progression is for all that to come crashing down. And that's what happened.
Yeah, it was too early in the episode for them to have such a joyous thing, for it not to, you had to expect it was going to flip in the end. But I do want to point out that scene, the meal fit for a king, that was actually the last thing they ever filmed. So very interesting. That's how they ended the show. Was those they were actually in Barbados and doing that, and drinking.
So that's why. So I don't know if y'all saw the clips of Kieran Culkin and Sarah Snook shaving Jeremy Strong's hair off.
Oh, I didn't see that. That's
like right when they finished filming, they shaved off his head. That has to be why, right? All the stuff in it.
That's interesting. So I mentioned before, we didn't get a lot of Connor in the episode. We didn't get a lot of Connor the last couple episodes, but let's talk about Connor and Willa. The final time we see them, they're having their great reallocation of items from Logan's home, which we know is now, was purchased by Connor in episode 4, I believe, from Marsha, that spit handshake. A lot of spitting in the show, a lot more spitting than I would expect. But so they're trying to sell stuff, they're trying to like who wants to claim certain items. They're placing stickers on things, and it's basically Connor thinks that once Minkin, if Minkin is elected as president, Connor is going to be off to Slovenia, where he's going to be an ambassador, and Willa is gonna, she's moving stuff out because they're gonna have this like long distance relationship, and she's looking to do some spring cleaning. And as she says, like this long distance thing might give us like add a little spice to the relationship. And I like how Roman is like, he's like, yeah, they call it the second week itch. because it has been only a couple weeks since they got married. They got married in episode 3, right? The same episode that Logan died. What did y'all think about the final time we saw Connor and Willa, the whole virtual dinner with Dad, where he recites all the presidential election losers, and kids are watching and they're crying and they're kind of holding hands. It's a happy, sad moment. Like that to me, that's all these people ever had. Whenever they have any kind of happy moment, there's some kind of sadness that's tied with it. And then after that, it's just all hell breaks loose, it seems like. Marcy, what are your thoughts on that whole scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole scene was great. I enjoyed seeing that virtual dinner because you could tell that for kids, that's all they ever would have wanted from Logan, right? Just to have some kind of relationship with them where you could be jovial and have a dinner and like just have fun and be a family. But they never got that because of who Logan is and because of, I guess, like circumstance and like his trauma or whatever. But you could tell that that is something that they had wanted, right? Maybe more than being CEO. If their dad had just loved him and they'd been able to have like a nice loving relationship with him, like that would have been great. And they had spent the last couple years of their dad's life again just fighting each other, fighting their dad over this. And here's Connor just able to have this, dinner with his dad, just joking around. Carrie was there, Jerry, Frank, and Carl are there. So it's just like they seemed like they were just having fun, enjoying themselves as people, regardless of how they felt about each other, like with the business and with Waystar, Royco, everything. Like they were able to just have a nice dinner. And, you could really tell that they were just, really feeling that. And I'm glad that Connor is on the outside of all of that, right? Like he doesn't have the aspiration to be the CEO or do all of these things. He's doing whatever he wants, even if it's to run for president and you fail spectacularly, like you're still doing what you want. You don't feel like you're tied to just trying to get this one thing that you're probably not going to get. So why even waste your life and your happiness trying to do it when you could do something else instead? So kudos to Connor for that. It was hilarious when Shiv was like, well, the whole thing with the Wisconsin court, maybe Megan's not going to be the president. And they're kind of like, oh, wait, what? Like now we might have to be together. So that was just kind of funny. So, I hope Will is able to fit her, cow print couch in there. But again, I think it just goes to show that you can be Logan Roy and be like this great titan of, the media industry, and you can be a billionaire and have this great penthouse apartment or whatever you want and all of these fancy things. But one day, you'll still die and your kids are putting stickers on whatever they want and everything else is just going to get thrown out. I don't think the kids understand that, right? You can be on top one day, but the next day you're dead and somebody's getting rid of all your shit. So I think it was a good way for them to just show that.
Yeah, I piggyback everything Marcy said. To me, looking at that video, that virtual dinner, shows the trade-off that you get with Logan. You can either join in this rat race and vie for his position, but it's going to put you outside of the emotional family part, right? You won't get the intimate moments with Logan because he's always going to view you as competition or a potential successor that he has to evaluate, right? Connor is outside of that rat race, so he gets the intimate moments. He just doesn't get to be taken seriously as some, a mogul or business person, right? But I don't even know if Connor really wants that. I think Connor is satisfied being able to take the benefits of being Logan Roy's son and being able to just do whatever the fuck. Go run a farm, cool, right? Go run, ill-fated, run for president. Go do that, cool, right? But he gets to do that. He gets to go find love on his own terms, right? He gets those things, but he just doesn't get the other things that comes with it. So it's like a trade-off. But yeah, and completely agree with Willa. it looks like Willa is, if not looking for an out in the marriage, just looking for an out in Connor. So, like having that opportunity, like it looked like she was really savoring that opportunity to just be away from him and, you know, do whatever. I like Connor seems like a good guy, but just a lot to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So she looked a little bit down, you know. So she's gonna have to find like her Connor vacation some other way, but.
Yeah, no, she definitely seemed kind of bummed out to find out that Mencken might not actually be the president. And that's something else about this show is like, I do think it would have been nice if we could have gotten like after the show where they have like a, you know, Jared Mencken actually wasn't elected or whatever, you know, like a little summary of each character. But, you know, maybe that'll lead to something down the road with some of these characters. And I think if there is kind of a spinoff, I would love to see, and I think the most likely would be a Tom and Greg continuing on in their, you know, their crazy story. I did like how once, you know, we find out that again, Greg has been pretty smart in how he's played this throughout the season and even previous seasons. But I like how he discovered that Matsson wasn't going to go with Shiv. Matsson and Oscar are, you know, they're speaking in Swedish, and so Greg just gets his phone out. He's using some audio translate app. And he finds out that, yeah, like they're not going to go with Shiv. He lets Kendall know. Then, you know, obviously gets back to Tom that, you know, like, well, I mean, eventually, you know, Shiv tells Tom that she found out through Greg. And we get the slap off in the bathroom between Greg and what's his name? Tom. It wasn't their final scene together, but it was like another kind of like highlight real moment for those two characters. And I think that like I could see those characters continuing on with this, although, you know, I don't know what the next step would be. I guess would be trying to, you know, Greg to try to supersede Tom in the future. But what'd y'all think about, or Marcy first, what'd you think about Tom and Greg, how their story kind of ended here?
It was a good way to wrap it up. I wasn't really sure if Tom is going to forgive Greg for what he did, right? The whole slap fight in the bathroom was great. It's like, okay, finally, like, and I think it might have been a good way for Greg to take his frustration out on all of the years that he's had to Greg for Tom, which can't be like gratifying, right? It's a thankless job. But at the end, I think even though he kind of betrayed Tom, I think Tom was like, you know what? Like, I can probably get you back on my side. I can overlook this. In the end, like, I still won. So, like, no harm, no foul. Like, I still got you, Greg. Kind of like a whole Casablanca thing, right? Like, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship type of deal. So, yeah, it would be great to know, like, how the story continued. You know, Greg being his glorified assistant. Maybe they'll knock the salary back down though, like, right? Like that might be a little bit of his punishment. You can't make $200K anymore. Like we might knock it down a bit, but you're still going to be okay because your grandfather is still a billionaire and he's old as shit too. So he's going to die soon. And, you know, you'll probably, I mean, he did give all of his money away, but there's probably still some other money. You're going to be okay, Greg. Like everybody's going to be okay.
Well, the money from the sale, right? I mean, I'm sure that that's something that they can all look forward to.
So that those scenes showed to me that Tom actually may have been the best out of everybody on the show as far as like playing the game, because Tom, he has minimal ambitions, right? Like his job, he just wants to be stable and have some level of power and influence and prestige. He doesn't need to have, I don't think he's ever vied for like the most power, the most prestige. Greg, because he's come from a much, much lower entry point into that world, like he's always searching for something. So when he got that information, like he had a choice that he could basically stay loyal to Tom, who's really been the only person to like consistently look out for him, or he could try to leverage that, you know, for something else, kind of what Tom taught him during the election episode. Like, you take his information, you hoard it, you harvest it, and then you use it when you need to. And like Greg is so thirsty to like get some type of stable footing,
right,
some type of stable position, that he kind of, for lack of a better term, he kind of blew his load too fast. Where he could have took that information and waited to see when was the best time, and that's something that Tom is much better at. He just knows when to dispense information for, you know, when to attack a certain move. And Greg, with the other siblings, the Roy siblings, all of them are really impulsive with the information that they get because they're so concerned with like ultimate ambition that they don't know how to kind of like harvest that information for the right time. And that's what fucked Greg. And it's like he just needs things because nothing's stable for him. I don't even know what his title is. Like, yeah. What is his title? Like, how much is his inheritance is, you know, gone for the most part. Like, I don't know what he stands to gain from this sale. Like, he is kind of fluttering in the wind, and he's kind of looking for, like Tom was at the beginning of the season, especially after Logan died. Like, he's looking for some anchor to kind of hold on to for just a more stable while also prosperous position. So, like Shiv, his foil in the last couple episodes, he flew a little bit too close to the sun, and you know he's getting knocked down for that. Luckily, Tom isn't as sadistic as the siblings are, so that he still. I think Tom also is alone still, and he's going to need somebody there who he semi-trust or trust that he can get, like Marcy said, on his side and keep him there with just a little bit of enough protection, which is all Greg really needs.
Yeah, you're right about Greg. He's always looking to make a trade. You know, I think maybe he missed his calling as like being an NBA GM. Maybe, you know, Waystar, they have sports ties, so maybe he could parlay, you know, being Tom's assistant to being like he's like the Knicks assistant GM or something. He's taking over and wheeling and dealing, trading first round picks from 7 years in the future or whatever to make some immediate deals. But yeah, and then as far as like another like spinoff idea, we've got an idea here from Ruby saying I'd watch a prequel of Logan and Ewan's childhood and rise to power. That could be interesting. Do y'all have any spinoff ideas y'all want to throw out there?
That would be a really good one. I would definitely watch that too.
Call it the Polio Chronicles.
The polio.
Wow, nice.
The pandemic. I've seen a lot of people like Tom and Greg as a spinoff.
Yeah.
Underrated spinoff potential. I'd love to catch up with Jess. I want to know what Jess is up to. Like,
yes,
how's she moving in the city? Who is she the next? What horrible family is she the next assistant to? So.
Yeah, I was surprised that we met. We didn't even get to meet, but we saw. Kendall said, "New Jess," like in the first few minutes of the episode. We didn't really see the woman, but like, I'm surprised he turned the page from Jess so quickly because that was just last episode. You think there'd be like a 2 weeks kind of thing, but I guess not. I guess not with the super rich and ultra powerful. They just move on, turn the page, and keep going. So that brings us to the end of our journey through the final season of Succession. I guess last thing, let's do just, final thoughts on the season or maybe final thoughts on Succession period. Marcy, what are you going to take away from this series?
Don't be a bitch. Be vulnerable, share your feelings. And just go for real relationships and not superficial things like money. I mean, that's what I'll take from this. I mean, I knew these things before, obviously, but this really solidifies it. Like, no good can come from being like these people.
Yeah. So don't be like these people.
Yeah.
Tristan, what do you got?
I mean, just the endearing themes of, love versus money, and like how oftentimes those two things cannot coexist. But I think we're meant to see this show through the lens of like non-American, like Jesse Armstrong, who like clearly has contempt for, you know, the way that the American elite society works and how it can be cancerous to like the entire population, you know, at whole. Like we should always be examining our like the people who run our like the biggest institutions, people who benefit the most from chaotic, you know, political events, financial events, you know, things like that. Like we should always be examining these things. And like Lamar said, these are not people we should want to be like. And so often we worship wealth because so often we see the opposite of it. You know, we see the non-wealth and like all the different problems that come with that. So like we're aspirational people. We want to be like, we want to live like the 1%. We want to ride in the cars, live in the penthouses and all these things. But what Succession also tells us is that I tell my students this all the time, like, man, a lot of these celebrities are miserable, like completely miserable, because not having everything allows you to desire different things and allows you to like evaluate how much you should desire things. And when you grow up in that bubble of wealth, like you don't really have the same concept for how much you should desire something. Like for them, they're just desiring this position because they just been taught that they should desire it without any real examination of why, right? And it's just led to like misery. Like for 4 seasons, we've seen misery. Like Kendall smiling was like they had to play the music for that shit. Like it was a big event. Like the score had to change because like this is a rare event. It's like Andrew Wiggins smiling. Like it's not something we see, you know, often. So just be careful. Really, just kind of seconding what Marcy said. Be careful what you worship, you know, and who you worship and what you care about. And ultimately, like you're gonna die. And what do you want to leave behind? What do you want to succeed, right? Is it just a position? Is it just stock in a company? Or is it like actual love and, you know, memories of, you know, protection and safety and all these things? So I think those are the biggest things that we should take away from Succession. And then ultimately, this is, as far as prestige TV goes, this is one of the gems of not just the 21st century, but really when we first start getting like real prestige television, you know, late 90s up to this point. I think it's in the top 5 of whatever list we want to make.
Yeah, this is such an incredible show. And, you know, it really, like, you know, Jesse Armstrong, the creator of the show, the entire cast, Brian Cox, Jeremy Strong, Kieran Culkin, Sarah Snook, Matthew Macfadyen, Nicholas Braun, Alan Ruck, J. Smith Cameron. I mean, the list goes on and on. The actors, like, I mean, this is probably to me, it's the most, like, the best well-acted show I think I've ever seen. The writing is incredible. The way they talk in this show, I've never seen a show do this. And even though they don't really say complete sentences, you understand what they're saying, but they kind of create like their own kind of language. I mean, from now on, I'm going to say, have a think. Let's have a think. You know, like they say that so much in this show, and I never heard that before this show. It's it's just an incredible show. And my lasting thought is I think they cut it short. I think there's a lot left to tell. And I think this show could have kept going for a couple more years and been just as excellent as it's been for the 4 seasons. But, you know, I respect the fact that they wanted to go out at the absolute tippy top of their game. And that's what this show did. And as far as like prestige TV, this might be the most prestigious. I mean, as far as like winning awards. Now, viewers wise, this show is not one of the most viewed shows on TV, but as far as like winning awards, this show has racked up a lot of awards. And I think we're going to see a lot more from this final season with, you know, so many of these characters vying for the same award, you know, like with Jeremy Strong, Kieran Culkin, Sarah Snook, all these people are going to be, you know, basically going for the same stuff, but it's been an incredible ride. And I'm really sad to see it go. Like I didn't love the finale, but I thought it was fair for this show. The show was a messy story about people that, you know, seemingly have everything, but then they don't have the most basic things in life. And
Yeah.
the show left us the way it started. Like their lives are going to continue. There's no rainbow at the end of it. There's no magical thing that's going to happen. It's, tomorrow's the next day of their mostly miserable lives, and they've just got to figure out a way to, be sad billionaires and, find it for Kendall, like find a new challenge in life. And, I mean, this show, every episode, like the way the episodes ended was it was always like such a strong ending to all these episodes that, it's just one of these shows where it's like, it's hard to pin down, like what was my favorite episode of the show. Cause so many of them were like, at such a high level. It's just, really was an incredible show. So any other final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, it was great.
We'll let Ruby have the last word. Succession is timeless. I think people will be able to relate to the story and the character struggles many, many decades from now. I totally agree. And I want to thank Ruby for joining us for the chat. We really appreciate it. We also had,
by the way,
killing it. So many great points. Next time, maybe we should have you on the show, honestly. Turn on your camera and join us. But we also had Walking with the Woods. They checked in on earlier, so I appreciate that. So thanks to everybody for watching. And hey, if you're watching this now or later on YouTube, do us a favor. Like the episode. Hit that subscribe button. That really helped us out. And also a couple of things you can do for us since we're trying to get some favors here going. We're trying to make trades. We're like Greg. We're all like cousin Greg. One thing you do that really help us out is follow us on Facebook, on Twitter and Instagram. We're at Watchers Basement. Be sure to use the hashtag Watchers Basement. And hey, if video is not your thing, that's okay. We're also on audio platforms. So please give us a listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And while you're there, be sure to drop a 5-star rating. That also helps us out. So as we close, thanks again for everybody for joining. Thanks to Tristan. Thanks to Marcy. And so I'm Justin saying, hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.